Good evening. I'm Rebecca Highbottom, and this is the Red Lipstick Republic Fake News, where we bring you all the fake news, conspiracy theories, and rumors we can muster. Obviously, we are here for your geopolitical soap opera reporting. And as such, tonight's show, we are talking about cognitive attacks, meaning our psychological ability to make decisions and to have decisions manipulated through other governments. Now, you would imagine that other governments are governments that are not our own. And you would be right, because in this article we're talking about China. China, our very, very best friend. Now, I just want to say that we are so critical of China and Russia, and they're always the I'm not sure if anybody's noticing, but the boogeymen are always the same. North Korea, China, Russia. Well, if they are the boogeymen, I ask you one thing. Why are we giving them all, and I mean all of our technologies, our industries, our factories, our cognitive faculties, basically anybody that had things that would benefit China in learning, we taught them. Our tax-paying dollars set China up, and they are our supposed enemy. They are the people we fear. We don't want them to come invade us. And yet, our governments are constantly colluding with the Chinese governments against the people. So not only do the Chinese people have their government on them, now our governments, America, Canada, Australia, you name it, all the Western countries are allowing China to get away with things that if they were truly our enemies, our governments wouldn't allow for. We're going to get into this article that we found that we thought was important for viewers to know, just as a point of reference, because sometimes when you're scrolling on Facebook or TikTok, and TikTok, from what I understand, I haven't done a deep dive, is tied to China. And everything that is blowing up on TikTok is information that is being taken from our collective society and being brought to be analyzed and reviewed by the Chinese. Much like when there is a sport, and in the sport, you watch to prepare for your battles, you watch your opponent's battles. So we are actively allowing China to collect our information. And then what do you think they do with that information? It's just, I'm preluding, setting this conversation up for us to have a discussion, because why would they need all of this information? Much like AI. AI is also learning about us. So AI is also collecting this information. Our information is the future currency, and we have to understand that in order to wake up and get out of the way of this predicament, because it will railroad us. Into the article. The article starts out by the title of the article. What caught our attention is China planning cognitive attacks against American citizens? Now, when we say American citizens, I want the world to understand that American citizens really stand for most of the Western nations. Granted, Americans have more leeways in many ways. For example, they have the gun law where they are able to, in some states, wear openly, and they have the freedom of speech right in their constitution, and that makes it special for the people in the United States. And I think that that is also one of the reasons why we must discuss why America is so very vital to this fight, because all of us in the Western nations can stand up with America, but ultimately America has really with it the documentation to back up free speech, to back up the Constitution that backs their ability to have the free speech, to have arms, to have the pushbacks that many of our countries learned not to put in their constitutions using the word constitution loosely because it is being devalued even in America. But with all that, the information that is being collected by all of the companies that the governments allow to continue this behavior is bringing us to a point where now all the information has been collected, and now it's very possible that we are cognitively being primed for outcomes that they are looking for. Basically, right now, for example, a very good indication of how we get primed. For example, one of the biggest things that right now with the trend is there was a trend. What was the latest trend that was happening on TikTok? There's so many trends that are coming out right now that they're pushing, for example, veganism. These media outlets are teaching and promoting and pushing far and wide people to stop, for example, consuming something, whether it is meat, whether it is meat products, or animal products, pardon me, whether it is to only live in a tiny home. These things are, the information is being collected and then it is being turned on its head and pushed out for us, the public, to fall for, to be influenced by. Why are influencers, pardon me, paid so heavily? They are paid heavily because they are leading you down a path they want you to go. Outlets like my own and other outlets that are trying to bring awareness to some of these things that are being discussed in the World Economic Forum, in the United Nations, in the European Union, in America, in the Congress. Any of these things are absolutely necessary to move forward in society in a way where you will remain or try to remain free. These are essential things that we need to discuss. Learning how to put on makeup is not essential. Learning how to be stupid or a jackass is also not essential. And yet, all of those channels, all of those information hubs are spread, pushed, and repeated so that it becomes popular, or people perceive it as popular. But really, is that true natural progression of our society? I hope not, because we're definitely not progressing in the right direction, if so. However, if instead they are carefully being led down a path in where we believe that this is a natural progression, this is where the mind job starts coming in. And there are small, tiny little snippets here and there that are coming out now, and they are proving that the agenda is not that they want us to think freely, but that not only do they want to censor us, but they also want to lead us down paths where they need us to be. The other small bit of information I would like to interject here before we get into the meat and potatoes, as I say, is that we are going to be the recipients of a gift that was promised over 100 years ago by China. Most people don't remember, most people have a hard time remembering history events that they themselves have lived through. Very sadly, our society is starting to have a large-scale memory problem. Now, we can discuss that at a later video, whether or not that is also done on purpose. However, in this video, I want to address what happened over 100 years ago that my great-grandmother used to talk about. Now, if you were one of those souls like myself who listened to their elders' stories, you would have found out that there was many things that were said hundreds of years ago that are now coming to fruition. One being that China wants to dominate us not only through our eyes, through what we perceive, but they also want to dominate us chemically. many, many, many moons ago, there was a story, long time ago, that China was infiltrated by the West through coercion of pharmacological drugs. And China vowed that they will respond and they will get back at the West the same way in which the West put pressure on China. China vowed over 100 years ago that they will prevail the West. They will outsmart the West. First and foremost, China promised they will outsmart the West. Now, if you look at that, their entire focus has been education and infiltration, education and infiltration. Then investment came along, and now they are set because they were infiltrated in a very nasty way. And now it's just coming back at us. This isn't against China. China has every right to follow up with their goals. And their goal was to get back at the very people that came and infiltrated them against their will. They were a closed society at that time. Now, this was many, 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 many years ago. But the Chinese vowed to get back at the West. And here we are. Not only are we having a problem with pharmacological problems with our society, so we are having an epidemic of opioids, overdoses, and otherwise slow burning deaths, because that's what they are. When you see people on the streets on these drugs, fentanyl and other things alike, these people are lost souls. To get them from the depths of their despair where they are chemically is almost next to impossible. It's a lost cause. It's a lost cause. You lose these souls. So it is a one war by whoever is waging it. Now, I digress because that is for another show. But the cognitive portion of the Chinese agenda is starting to rear its head. Now, into the article. It starts by saying, the goal is to influence the U.S. population. They just introduced who the players are, and these are all Chinese institutions within the Army, because the Army and the government are linked. The goal is to influence the U.S. population to psychologically accept surrender. According to Nathan Beauchamp, a policy researcher at the Rand Corporation, there is a group of PLA researchers often focused on influencing operations, influencing others, who argue that the cognitive domain is the new focus of warfare. Sure it is. These cognitive domains operations are meant to create a psychological or cognitive decision to surrender. He added, specifically, the tactics include the use of technologically enhanced propaganda such as AI-generated deepfakes, synthetic information, information cocoons, and perceptive cognitive attacks, and precision cognitive attacks to polarize American people. Now, I want you to step back from what's being said, whether or not you believe this to be true, whether or not this is actually true, whether the article is reporting on truths. I want you to think in your own life. In the last 3 years, do you or do you not feel more nervous that there is a war, more nervous that we might have a nuclear strike, more nervous that things are going not in the right direction, even though that there's this underlying or overlaying, not underlining, because this is the underlining, the overlaying messaging is, we've got to fight, more money, we need to send more money, we need to do more, we need to keep going, we need to get more people, we need to call on more people, we need more people to fight, we need to fight, we need to fight, we need to fight. But underlining, there is a tone that we might not make it. Oh no, we might not make it. And that is the attack. The attack is that on the one hand, we are being pushed into war, but on the other hand, we're not sure if this is a war that we can win. And the messaging is clear and it's subtle, but it's clear. It carries on. By using these measures, the CCP, which is the Chinese Communist Party, hopes to win a conflict with as little kinetic destruction as possible, warns the CCP, working on the more aggressive form of psychological warfare. These tactics are intended to affect the target, so you and me, the target's cognitive decision-making and behavior. They are focusing on you and me. We're the target. The goal of the CDO, which is the Cognitive Domain Operations Unit, is to achieve what the PLA refers to as mind dominance, defined as the use of propaganda as a weapon to influence public opinion to effect change in a nation's social system, likely to create an environment favorable to China and reduce civilian and military resistance to PLA actions, the report said. First and foremost, let's review. If China can use these tactics, and these tactics are well known by the Western world, we have been using them for decades. Russia's been using them for even longer. We are proficient also at these tactics. Now the question is here, is this truly China doing this to the West? Or can we see that the West also, perhaps, maybe, just a thought, is also doing this to its people and to others? Because really, propaganda is not one-sided, and each country in the dispute must line their people, their civilians, in a manner that is going to give the greatest popular opinion. One question I have is, if this article is telling us about what China can do, is it then plausible that not only China is doing this cognitive attack, but then also that perhaps on a larger scale, the West is doing so as well? And if we can look back at the last 3 years, can we see situations or instances where our government has used these cognitive attacks to also make us feel like we have no other choice, like we're defeated? We were defeated by the sickness, no? And therefore, there was a window of opportunity for the governments to also mandate things because we had lost, we were defeated by this invisible thing. So if we look at what our enemies are doing to us, we should also then look at what that means if our governments did that to us. But we move on. It's just a food for thought because this article specifically is pointing at China. But we always know that when you point a finger, let me point properly. When you point a finger, there's always 3 pointing back. So if we are pointing at China, how many are pointing back at us? These are for the individuals that think questions. We go on. Recent reports by Microsoft and Meta, and I will just report to let you know, in case you didn't already know, that these are reputable, authorized institutions that are always truth first and foremost, right? You know, Microsoft and Meta, they're nothing but truthers, nothing but truthers. Just remember that where some of these, let's say, sources are coming from. They're coming from the experts. Microsoft and Meta also found the CCP has been leveraging a combination of social media, paid influencers, proxy websites, and PR firms to manipulate public opinions about China. And I'm sure that Facebook and Microsoft, Mr. Billy G, has never, ever in the history of their existence manipulated any of their clients, because the people that use their platforms are their clients. I'm sure they completely have never done that. Moving on. While China is deploying fifth-generation warfare against its adversaries, the Biden regime is busy keeping the southern border open and launching airstrikes in multiple Middle Eastern countries on behalf of, well, we know who, the big boys, the Israeli boys. So what this article really is saying is watch out for big bad China, because big bad China is going to spy on you, and big bad China is going to affect your decision making and your cognitive skills in order to set your sights straight. But the people in the West, you know, the ones that came up with social media, the ones that made billions on social media, the ones that persuaded everyone that mandates were absolutely legit and anybody speaking out against them were absolute loons, there was no cognitive dissuasion or persuasion there, not at all. Everybody was totally making up their own decisions, and everybody went in for the treatment fully educated on all the side effects, notwithstanding the 400,000 pages of side effects or whatever. I'm exaggerating just to make a point. But my point is that they're saying China did it. And if you read this article, if you really read it, you will see that what they're saying is that they are doing it, but that China's copying. And good for China. Because after all, we've taught China so many really good tactics. It's kind of like, when you know a language and then you're teaching the language to someone that doesn't know the language, isn't it so ironic that they learn the swear words first? That's what China's doing. They're learning all the swear words first, and they're learning it from the big boys that created the swear words. It just so happens that they're using the swear words much better than we are. What do you think? How do you think this article relates to us being cognitively manipulated? Because we are, ladies and gentlemen. We are constantly being berated. We are constantly being told that we are thinking incorrectly, we are speaking incorrectly, we are using the wrong think. There's a right think. You cannot be seen if you're speaking this way or that. What is that, ladies and gentlemen, but cognitive attacks, but cognitive dissidence that they're creating between you and me, between me and the ability to read something and discern whether or not it's good for me or bad for me. Ladies and gentlemen, we are away from the world where you are permitted to go to the buffet of information and you are able to decide on your own. Journalism is a persuasion of opinions and circumstances of where people are able to make money, and they try to bring you there in order for them to get paid. Journalism is dead for the most part. And when people like Tucker Carlson or Joe Rogan say anything that is unauthorized, and God forbid someone like me, well, I'll be wiped off the earth, and Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson will have problems. But these times are very worrying when we are losing the ability to be able to discern whether or not something is good for us, and more so, whether or not we're making that decision or whether or not we are being told to think one way or another. This is a very, very, very challenging time and a very dangerous time for us as humans to be making decisions, because we are so influenced by the TikToks of the day, by the Facebook posts, by what X is saying, and what on any given day Elon Musk is saying. As we wrap up tonight, we would appreciate to know what your thoughts are and whether or not you do believe that all of the thoughts that you come up with and all of the decisions you make are entirely and solely yours. Or do you also feel like in today's world we are swayed and turned and moved and cajoled to make a decision that perhaps not only doesn't serve us, but actually can harm us? And I think in the last 3 years, many people that have done what they thought was the right thing to do because that's what they were told, are now regretting these decisions that now they are looking back and seeing that they were not decisions that they made without coercion, without cajoling, without being pushed and prodded in maybe very invisible ways, in ways that they didn't understand at the time. If you agree with this, please share your comments and let us know how you feel disillusioned with the decisions you've made, thinking that you were making good decisions. I know I've been lied to and tricked, and I know that this is why I am here speaking to you now, because I feel I've been tricked, I've been lied to, I've been manipulated, and I don't like being manipulated. And I doubt that anybody out there does. So with that, I thank you for your time tonight, and I wish you a very independent and free-thinking day. Have a good night. And as my very favorite, most wise man in the world that I know used to say, may your God or your gods go with you. Good night.